Yo guys, and welcome to a new review. Today we are talking about Mel Gibson's Flight Risk. Alright, a January movie screaming January all over its premise and runtime. It's a tight, neat runtime from 90 minutes. We always love that. But sometimes 90 minutes is still too much. And at points in this movie, I really felt it's really hard that this movie tried to get extra story in. And that was mainly to do with Mark Wahlberg's character, which I didn't buy entirely. I mean, the runtime for 90 minutes, it's nice, and it's good that it's not a 2-hour movie, but it could have done well with an 85 to 80 minute runtime, and which I thought would have been fine entirely. That wasn't the case, sadly enough, and we have a 90-minute runtime that sometimes feels very forced because they don't know what to do with it and they don't know how to get the tension with the watcher for the entire runtime, which is basically what this movie was aiming for. Is something like Plane from a few years ago with Jared Butler, where the tension was this high the entire runtime that the mediocre movie was pretty good just because of that tension. This movie didn't really have that. The leads weren't as interesting. The bad guy wasn't as interesting. He was very bald. He was very Mark Wahlberg-y, and I have to say that I do not understand why Mark Wahlberg was tied to this project, because they could have gotten any actor. It's mainly because he is a famous head that they used him for this movie, I think, because otherwise no one would watch it. And I don't think now everyone will gonna watch it because it's just Mark Wahlberg, you know? It's just Mark Wahlberg wearing a fake-ass wig in a very mediocre movie. And I mean, the tension sometimes is there, especially when his character actually gets to do stuff. It's quite tenseful and it's quite funny even sometimes. But in all those moments in between, which is like 90% of the runtime, where Mark Wahlberg is just doing nothing, you can't build the entire movie on that. Even with the giant leak happening in the backside of the story, it's just not nearly as interesting as everything you could have done with the plane and having to put that plane on the ground. That actually felt quite easy, which is something you definitely don't want with this kind of movie. So that was a really big bummer. I also don't know what I expected from this movie. I mean, I think it's pretty much exactly what I expected it was gonna be, but there's just things I hoped would have been better. You could have tied anybody else instead of Mark Wahlberg to that role and it wouldn't have made a difference. Maybe it would get me less mad and less critical about this movie because they completely marketed the entire thing with Mark Wahlberg. I thought he was going to be the lead. I knew he was going to be the bad guy, but I thought they would at least give him something to do instead of just sitting and doing nothing. In the end, his character did some pretty crazy stuff, which is something I did like, but for most of the runtime, I was just bored out of my mind, even though I watched this in 40x just to make the experience a little better, because most plane movies I watched in 40x, like Plane and Top Gun Maverick, were top-notch in 40x. This one, sadly enough, didn't have any of that, and that is what made me indefinitely sad. So I'm gonna give this movie a 2.5 star out of 5. I didn't think it was that great. What did you think of Flight Risk? Please let me know in the comments down below, because I'm really excited to hear your opinion on this movie. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.